Good evening, everybody. My name's Jeff, and I work at Aberystwyth University. You can probably tell from my accent. I'm from the Midlands, so I'm from Cannock originally, and I live in Wolverhampton. So, whilst this backdrop might look like I'm in Aberystwyth, I'm certainly this evening in sunny Wolverhampton. So I'm not too far from you in Stourbridge or wherever you are across the Midlands this evening. It's my pleasure to be guiding you through two parts to this evening's event. First part where we'll be looking at the UCAS process, and then the second part will be where we'll be talking about how you can make the most of open days, which are an absolutely integral part of the decision-making process around higher education, if not in many ways the most important part. Just as a little bit of background to Aberystwyth to begin with. So we're around about 2 hours 40 from where I live, as I mentioned, in Wolverhampton. A direct train straight across to Aber. There's no beach in Wolverhampton. There's certainly not one in Stourbridge. I was in Stourbridge last Saturday and I didn't find it. If you found one, you should be a multimillionaire. But we're right on the coast in Aberystwyth. It's about a 5-minute walk when you get off the train station to the beach. This is Aberystwyth looking down onto the town centre. We're a small university town, and obviously throughout the presentation I'll be making reference to Aberystwyth throughout, but I've worked at local universities across the Midlands, so I'll provide you with a variety of examples and things that you can be asking, for example, when you go on those open days to different institutions, either locally or further afield. So just before I come on the first part of the session, which is the UCAS process overview, I thought I'd give you a little bit of a flavour as to how quickly time flies. So if you're a parent in the room when your son or daughter was born, I think I've got the maths right with this one, back in 2005, 2006, I've written it down. Back in Coronation Street, for any of you who are soap fans, Rita offered Norris a partnership in the cabin. I mean, simpler times or what? And then in EastEnders, Alfie and Kat left the square. I think Alfie's back in EastEnders at the minute, but we'll put that to one side. When your son or daughter, or you as a student, were in year one, this is making me feel old. It was the London Olympics and Paralympics in London. In England. I went not as a participant, but as a spectator. Absolutely fantastic experience. But yeah, that was when you were back in year one. Donald Trump became president-elect when you were just starting secondary school in year 7. I'll move on from that to what you might have missed, that in year 10, when you were in year 10, there was some research that was done online that shows that to de-stress, it's worth watching some videos of cats. So it might be worth something you might want to be thinking about doing when you are making decisions around the university process. Perfect. Thank you very much. I was just going to ask for microphones to be turned off. Absolutely fantastic. So this last one is not me when I was little, before you say it is or was, but the rhetorical question I have for you is, does this child look excited or scared? And that's what this evening's session is all about. To do with university and the higher education process, it is absolutely perfect and natural, whether you're a student or a parent or other supporter and family member, to have a combination of those emotions. And what our aim is tonight, and what the careers teams aim throughout the coming months, is to turn that nervousness into excitement. And the way you do that is by, as a student and as a family, coming to an informed decision about higher education, where to study, what to study, to do the research. And the earlier you do it, that's why we're doing tonight in the middle of June in year 12, the earlier you start that research process, in my opinion, the better decisions that you'll make to turn that nervousness into even more excitement about higher education. So as I've mentioned, there's 2 sections to tonight's presentation. The first 25 minutes or so, we'll be going through the UCAS process and going through the UCAS application calendar as such. We'll be then having, literally, I'll either come off the screen just for a minute or two to allow you to grab a drink, or if there's any questions at that point, I'm more than happy to take them. But we'll have a couple of minute breather in the middle. Also as well, the college, so Faye, for example, and Lou may want to go over some college specific information, which they can do at that point. But we'll have a couple of minute pause in the middle, and then the second part of tonight's presentation, another 25 minutes, will be around how to make the most of university open days. Let's start with the UCAS process though. Firstly, some people are worried about what UCAS actually is. Don't worry, It's an interim, it's a middleman as such. It's the organisation that's responsible for managing and processing applications to higher education courses in the UK. So what happens as a student at the college, what you will do is you will complete the UCAS application form in college electronically via the UCAS website. Once it's complete, UCAS in essence distribute that application to the universities that you've applied to, and universities view the application online, and then through the UCAS system, students will start to receive replies from universities, and they will hopefully be offers or notifications that they've been unsuccessful in their application. So see UCAS as that kind of middle cog between yourself as the applicant and the university. They manage the application process. But a lot of people get worried about what UCAS actually is, and actually it's quite a large organisation who manage the application process to higher education courses. Let's have a look at the chronological UCAS calendar now. So let's start with September and before. And when I say September, I'm talking of September in year 13. Before that point, you can start your application. You can't submit them just yet, but you can certainly start the application process going. And one of the major parts of the application process is obviously course choices. And to get to that point, you should now be starting, if you haven't already done so, undertaking some thorough research, and that can be as an individual or a family, to do with courses, locations, and so on. And what I'm going to go through quickly now are some of the best to not so best ways of undertaking that research into university courses, choices, locations, and so on, because there's so much information out there. There's so many fantastic courses, both regionally, locally, and nationally throughout the UK. It can be a little bit of information overload. And as I say, what I'm going to do now is go through from best to basic ways of undertaking that research. The best way of undertaking research by far are university open days. We're going to focus on those more in the second part of the session, but why they are the best ways of undertaking research. Until you go and see a course, until you go and see a location and meet academic staff, whether it's a town, a city, the university, anything and everything to do with the place and the course and the location, until you go there, you won't be able to get a feel of whether it's right for you. Go, see, explore. You will never go and buy a house without going to look at it. And it should be the same with a university. And I know it takes time, effort, and money to go to open days, but as you will see in the second part of this presentation, they are well worth it. And if you do come away from an open day thinking, well, that university is not for me, well, much better you spend one day of your life there than 3 or 4 years. That was a huge mistake that I made when I went to university and subsequently dropped out. I never been to the location before I actually started the course. And on an open day, again, you will see when we come to the second section for this evening, you'll be able to engage with academic staff. And what we'll be talking about later on are some of the key questions that you can ask to make sure you come away from those open days with all the information that you need. As I say, I would recommend on going on more than one open day. I know it takes time, effort, and money, but again, don't go to open day 1 and think it's the best university ever and it's for you. Well, go compare, contrast with other universities, because you might find actually university 2 or 3 is better than 1. But if you hadn't gone to them, you would never have known that. Moving on from open days, the university websites are great. So are university or careers fairs. The college has got one. It had one last October. It's got another one coming up this October. That's where universities and the college, I can't quite remember, I suspect there are 30, 40, 50 plus universities there, are on site, and representatives like me are there for students to ask questions to. It was very busy last October. I know the date's in already for this October as well. But by engaging with the universities through that way and a rep kind of in the college, again, it's an opportunity for students to get answers to them. But the university websites are pretty up to date with information. The UCAS website as well. On the UCAS website, you can, if you Google UCAS Course Search, what UCAS Course Search is, it's the search engine where you can type in any course in the world, pretty much any subject, and it will give you all the different universities that offer those courses. And that's a really quick win to start to see where offers what you might be interested in. You can narrow it down by location. There's lots of other criteria to filter through as well, but that's a really good quick win, the UCAS website and the UCAS Course Search. Professional content can be pretty good as well. I'm talking about league tables. I would say league tables and other ranking sites, use them, but also not necessarily take them with a pinch of salt, but they're not the be all and end all. They'll only give you a snapshot at a point in time, and there's lots of different things that go into league tables, but other things, professional content. So for example, anyone who's interested in nursing or healthcare related courses, the NHS is fantastic for you to find out about the 6 C's of the NHS Constitution. But also, for example, if you're interested in psychology, you might want to look at the BPS, the British Psychological Society website, or for marketing, the CIM, Chartered Institute of Marketing website. So there's lots of various professional content websites that are out there that can be great to do research. Student content, it can be good, but again, really take that with a pinch of salt. It's like anything, we can all be swayed in our opinions depending on something that's just happened yesterday, or a relatively minor bad experience or negative experience from a couple of months ago. So remember that vlogs and blogs that are written by students, they are an individual opinion. Definitely engage with student ambassadors on open days and engage with student content, but always remember it's an opinion of someone depending on the kind of experience that they've had. People as well in general. So again, in families where you've got older siblings who've been to a university, one of my friends, he went to BCU and he went to Perry Barr campus. Well, that campus no longer exists. So if he gave me his perspective of university life, it would be outdated because he's talking about a campus that, as I say, has been bulldozed. So again, I'm talking about friends, family, but also teachers and staff in college as well. Take it with a pinch of salt. And also hard copy literature. The irony is not lost on me on this one because we use prospectuses all the time. But remember, a prospectus is like a newspaper. It gets out of date the day it was printed. You'll never see a sad face in there, a rainy day picture. Use it as a starting point, but as you can see towards the top of this slide, there's far better ways of undertaking that research. So I thought it was really important to give a couple of minutes on the research process to begin with, because that is an integral part of the UCAS application that you can be doing now to make sure you do as much as you can to get the right course at the right location. So the UCAS application itself, I can't go through all of the sections that are on that application, but what I've got now on screen are 5 of the main parts of the application. I think they're fairly self-explanatory. So for example, in the education section, students would put the qualifications they're currently studying, but also their GCSE grades, for example, the course choices. The point I want to make here is that all the sections are linked. So the personal statement is a key part of the application process, and quite often it's the area that students find a little bit stressful. Use the tools that are on offer both at the college but also that universities provide to support with the personal statement. And also the personal statement's there for students to sell themselves. So what's really important, in one way or another, the college will be providing a reference for the student, and that's the same if they go for jobs or degree apprenticeships. Make sure the college staff know about all the good stuff that you as a student are doing. You know, they're not mind readers. They can only back you up in that reference if they know about it. So just remember that they all don't see as a student, don't see these sections in isolation. The excellence that you're showing in the personal statement should also be potentially reflected in that reference as well. But the college can only back you up and only kind of agree about the good stuff that you're doing if they know about it. And that would be something that I would recommend with personal tutors and staff in the college that you do longer term. On the personal statement, I'm talking about some of the tools that are out there now. So firstly, the top one here is our Aber Hub. And this is where you can find out about different courses, and potentially there's some videos we've got online as to what admissions tutors look for in different sections for different subjects. But the really good one is the middle one here, saku-student.com/Aber. On that website, there's something called the personal statement tool, where this is the kind of the homepage of that SACU website. And there's lots of different areas on there to help students where they can kind of do a careers quiz, they can explore apprenticeships. But the one I want to focus on just for a second or two is the personal statement checker, because what students can do is they can upload as many times as they want copies of their personal statement. And what it does instantaneously, it gives them feedback as to, for example, the number of cliches they've used, how many times they've begun sentences with the word I, have they an ABC rating, so that's activity, benefit, cause, for example, how it links to the course. It's a strategy that students will use when developing a personal statement to get a really thorough message across. And also, how many times have they repeated certain words? So here in the example I've got now, they've repeated really and enjoy for eight times. So again, it gives them a flavour as to some of the things that they should be looking to change, potentially, and reword. And that's free to use, and it's a really good website for them to start to use as and when. And that's what I'd encourage them to think about as well. Starting the personal statement sooner rather than later, drip feed the content to make it as good as it can be. Another one as well, and I'm not sure if the college have it in their careers library, is the HEAP guide. If not, older versions can be purchased off Amazon from a couple of years ago because it's released every year for a few pounds. And what the HEAP guide does is it gives in there for every subject that a student might want to study, is it gives them some advice as to what admissions tutors are looking for in the personal statement, reasons for rejection, for example, kind of no-nos to do with the application. So the HEAP guide, HEAP is the guy who's written it, Brian Heap. He's on about version 54, I think. But if the careers library at college have got it, great. If not, they can also be purchased kind of ad hoc as well off Amazon, old versions for a few pounds as well, something to look into. So just again wanted to give a bit of background to the importance of personal statements and how students, in essence, some of the tools they can be using to help themselves. Okay, so students have done the research, they know what they want to apply to. In the UCAS process, generally speaking, students can apply for up to 5 courses. There are some slight variations if you're applying to Oxford or Cambridge, and there's also some slight variations, for example, if you're applying to medicine, veterinary science and dentistry, for example. But again, the college can go into a little bit more detail at a later date if that's applicable to you. But for most students, they can apply to up to 5 courses. So I'm going to work through now a made up example. So this is for business related courses. So a student might apply to Gloucestershire, Southampton, Bournemouth, Aber, and also Cardiff Met. And one of the things you can start to see here, that not all courses have exactly the same title. Don't judge the course just by its title. You've got to look at the content. So here we've got business and management, Cardiff Met, business and management, brackets finance. And that's something that I'd encourage students to do as well with their research, is not just to look at the title of a course. It will not tell them anything really about the content. But let's assume they've done the research. Let's assume that all these are within the area of business and management that they're interested in, and they can apply for up to 5 courses. Some students might have a couple of course choices at the same university. That's also possible as well. Now, you might hear the college refer to students in their application having what are known as aspirational, solid and safe choices. So one of the reasons why why college make reference to this and why students have 5 choices is we would recommend that one of their course choices is aspirational. And what we mean by that is that basically the aspirational choice is 1 grade, perhaps 2 at a push above what their predicted grades are. Because what some universities might do is they might look at the personal statement, see excellence in there and say, okay, we can see at the moment they're still 1 grade off what we need, but we'll still make them an offer because we can see the potential. So it's always worth having, in my opinion, an aspirational choice. Also, we generally would recommend that students have 2 solid or 3 solid choices, and that's there or thereabouts with the predicted grades. And a safe choice might be perhaps 1 grade what is below what they are predicted of them. So there's kind of a range there for students. And if you hear the terms safe, solid, and aspirational choices, that's what they're referring to. But I would put, and again, the college, Faye and Lou are more than welcome to come in at the interval and go into a little bit more depth with this if needed as well. But we generally say 1 aspirational choice. Some other really dull but also important stuff. Students can start the registration process, and again, I'll let the college staff explain if that started in college already, but they can register via the UCAS hub now. And what happens, I showed you some of the sections earlier on, the 5 sections, 5 of the sections of the UCAS application. The others that students need to fill in will kind of dynamically appear. There's been a lot of improvements to the UCAS kind of system recently to kind of guide students through all the sections that they need to complete. So in theory, they shouldn't miss any sections. And the college will also have a buzzword as well. What that buzzword does is links the student's application to the college so that tutors can see the application to do the reference. I know I'm going a little bit technical here, and this will be explained more so to students as they go further on with the application process. There is a fee. It's £27.50 for next academic year, and that is one kind of all-encompassing fee. It's not £27.50 per course or anything like that. That's the whole cost of the application. Make sure as a student you choose the right qualifications if you're listing A-level subjects, GCSEs, any BTECs that have been done. Also choose the right unis for your course choice. When I worked at Birmingham City University and students visited us, the number of people I thought we were the University of Birmingham was more than you might think. So be really careful with that. And also be making sure to do with the degree course that you're choosing the degree course that you think you are as well. Basically, double check all of this information to make sure that's accurate first time round. On that, don't guess an answer. Ask if you're unsure. There's the new careers hub at Stourbridge I was in just a few weeks ago. The team are more than happy to take any queries that you've got. Don't guess an answer though around some of anything to do with the UCAS application. The college can see the students' progress throughout. So if they're behind or they haven't done certain sections, the college will be able to see all of that. Inappropriateness, I'm thinking of things like email addresses. Top tip for students, and this is for student finance, it's for any correspondence with universities and the UCAS application, don't have an inappropriate email address that might have been kind of started when they were age 8. I think you get what I mean. Just have a simple yet professional email address to make sure that you're giving the right impression just through those little bits as well. And then finally, and I'll come back to the UCAS tariff in a moment, some students might be studying some qualifications, for example, in music outside of college that will attract what is known as UCAS points. Double check that any qualifications that you are doing outside of college, whether they attract UCAS points in their own right, because you can include those on the application as well. Okay, so moving on now to some key deadlines. For those who are applying to Oxford and Cambridge, and also medicine, dentistry, veterinary medicine and veterinary science, the deadline for this coming cycle is the 16th of October, where you can see that's only just over 4 months away. So it's an earlier deadline for students who are in those categories. What I'd recommend is that any students, if they've not let the college know that they're an early entrant, they need to let them know as soon as possible. But also look for dates that aren't in the UCAS calendar, and I'm thinking things like open days or any taster events as well, because they'll be taking place now going forward in the summer and also in the autumn as well. So moving on to what is known as the main equal consideration deadline for all of the categories other than the ones I just showed you for October. The deadline for next academic year is the 31st of January, and it's what is known as the equal consideration date. So students can apply after that, but it's really not recommended, because anyone who applies before that deadline, universities have to give equal consideration to. Anyone who applies after that date, universities technically don't need to consider their application should they choose not to. So I'd really recommend, and we'll talk about internal deadlines later, I'm sure, students apply before that deadline. The college will have a much earlier deadline than that though, because what they will be doing, they need to process hundreds of applications. So whilst the UCAS deadline formally is in January, the college will have an early deadline, probably in the autumn of this calendar year, because as I say, whilst the student's only doing one, the college are processing hundreds and hundreds. So they need good time to get all the reference and the other information together. And the college will be promoting what their internal deadline is as well. Not all university courses interview. Some people have the misconception that they do and they don't. A few top tips though for those courses that do interview, and they may take place at the turn of the year, kind of January, February time. They could be online or in person. There's still a mixture going on as well. And remember, at interview, they may have as a student, they may have your personal statement in front of you at the time. So remember, you've got to be prepared to elaborate on anything that you add in that personal statement. They might ask you about contemporary issues in the field, and this is where, again, as parents, supporters, you can support students with interview practice, where you can ask them about contemporary issues. Are they giving you full and reasoned responses? Have they reflected on why they want to study the course that they want to do? Where's their motivation as well? So this is where, as a parent or supporter, you can really come into your own with interview practice and technique. And it goes without saying that the worst thing to do at the end of an interview is when the interviewer says, have you got any questions? You just say no. Again, this technique will really help, and that now is the time to kind of do it, because I recognise that many students in year 12 have never had any interviews before. Some interviews might be what are known as multiple mini interviews. I think I've got that the right way around, MMIs, whereby basically they go and they move around different stakeholders who are related to the subject. So if they're applying to nursing, they might have 10 minutes with a patient, 10 minutes with a nurse, 10 minutes with a GP, something like that. So they'll move around different stations. And again, it goes back to where you can come in as parents and supporters, questioning, being polite, interview practice and technique, because those interviews are there to help the university decide if the student is ready and suitable to go into whatever area they might want to go into. But not all universities and not all courses will have an interview as part of the application process. Some will, and they take place at different points throughout the year, probably, as I've mentioned, January, February time. So in the spring, and the reason I've put the spring is because it can be at various points in the spring. Firstly, universities will respond with an outcome. So let's go back to our worked example earlier on. There's a number of responses that universities might give. Firstly, they may make students what is known as a conditional offer. And in this case, for kind of a made up example for Gloucestershire, they may say, if you meet the conditions, which are you get BBC at A level, if you want the place on the course, it's yours. The second response you might get is you're unsuccessful. And I think that speaks for itself, that your application, unfortunately, at this point hasn't been successful. Students can ask for feedback. Whether universities will give it and what to extent they will, again, it will vary from university to university. Here, for example, for Bournemouth, again, a student received a conditional offer, but this time the grades that they need are BCC. Also, some universities may make offers in what is known as UCAS points. So for us, for example, here, the terms of the offer is that a student attains 120 UCAS points. This is where it looks scarier than it is. What happens is, where universities use points, they use a tariff to convert A level, BTEC, T level and other grades into points, and then they will say that a student needs a certain number of points. So for example, here 120 points could be derived from 3 grade Bs, because 3 times 40 is 120. So some students will get offers back in grades and others will get them in points. That's just an extract of the UCAS tariff. It's pages and pages long, but again, the college can guide students through, and also it's on the UCAS website as well. And then finally, some universities may make what are known as unconditional offers. They're not really in favour very much at the moment. An unconditional offer is where a student has demonstrated excellence in some of the academic regard, and the place is theirs if they want it, no matter what grades they get. So for example, if they've got an excellent portfolio for art, they might see excellence do that and make them what is known as an unconditional offer. Or if they've sat any entrance examinations, for example, they may have seen excellence do that regard and made them an unconditional offer. As I say, they're fairly rare, but what I would say is if anyone is lucky enough to get an unconditional offer, it is not an excuse to take the foot off the pedal with the A levels and so on that you're studying. Because in my case, for example, when I dropped out of university and went back 12 months later, what did they look back at? My A level grades. So you never know when you're going to need them, but they are quite rare at the minute, an unconditional offer. So these are the possible outcomes. Some of the conditions of an offer could be as well include things like GCSE receipts, or if a DBS is required, or for some science subjects in particular, students might need a particular grade in biology or in chemistry or maths or something like that. So an offer might come back BBC, but you need a grade B in your A-level biology. There's, in essence, an infinite number of conditions that could be attached to an offer. Moving on from the spring, once students get a response, they are potentially invited to an applicant day, and that's where another opportunity students have to go and visit a university. A little bit more intimate than an open day, but that's where students can, perhaps in a smaller group, because they're further on down in the kind of decision-making process, have another chance to go, engage, and see whether the university is right for them. I'd strongly, again, advise on going on applicant days if they are available. Sometimes they're at weekends, sometimes they're in the week as well. But again, it's a really important part to make sure that students make the right decision for them. And then students have, once they've been on applicant days and once they've received responses back, they have then the power to reply to the offers. So going back to the example, what students do at this point is they narrow the 5 down to 2. And firstly, they make what is known their firm choice, the university and the course that in an ideal world they want to go to. So in this case, naturally, I've used the example of Aberystwyth. In addition as well, they can have what is known as an insurance choice. So an insurance choice that means if you don't meet the requirements of your firm choice, so in ABBA's case, if you don't get the 120 points, you would, the simplest way I can explain it is drop down to your insurance choice. Now, because what that infers is your insurance choice should have lower entry requirements than your firm choice, because if you don't met the conditions of your firm and your insurance is higher, well, you're never going to meet the conditions of the insurance choice either. So basically, students narrow it down from the 5 to the 2, a firm choice where they want to go ideally, and then a backup choice, an insurance choice, which generally should have lower entry requirements than the firm. The other 3, in its simplest form, then disappear. So students, once they've received responses back, they narrow the 5 down to 2, a firm and insurance. Moving on, from February, student finance opens a completely separate application process to the university application. So you apply for university courses through UCAS, and then you apply for student finance through the gov.uk website, through Student Finance England. The reason I've got an asterisk next to when it opens is because the dates when it does become open vary from each year. It's generally between, usually in February and March, but again, the college will make announcements as well. And then there's also a process called UCAS Extra that's available at that point as well. I'll come on to UCAS Extra in a moment. The other thing to consider as well, we're going through the UCAS calendar here. There might be other university deadlines that students need to adhere to, and they include things when they need to make their decisions by, but also there might be deadlines for things like applying for accommodation, for example. So it's about thinking through and reading correspondence, not only from UCAS, but also universities as well, for other deadlines, which I'm not even covering in this UCAS kind of process this evening. So UCAS Extra, just very briefly to touch upon that, if a student comes the spring and they've got their 5 choices and they've decided they've had a complete change of mind in the subject that they want to apply for, or they've got no offers back from universities, there's a process called UCAS Extra, where students, even in the spring of year 13, should they need to, they can continue to apply for courses one at a time. And that's, as I say, two main reasons why students would do that. A, if they've not received any offers back from any universities, and then B, if they've had a complete change of mind of the subject that they want to apply to for whatever reason, they might use this process called Extra as well. So come August, results are due, and we have a process called confirmation. The process called confirmation is where students receive universities receive A-level results the weekend before students do. And the reason for that is what they'll do at that point is they'll do that matching process to see, have students got the grades that we were looking for, and can we therefore accept them onto the course? And that's called a confirmation process. But the top tip around A-level results is please be around for clearing. Be around for clearing, because be around on A-level results day, because A-level results day is not just about receiving results. It's if things don't go quite to plan, students are in the vicinity to go through a process called clearing. They might not need it, but it's so much more difficult if they're on holiday or across the other side of the world, should they need to go through that process called clearing. Because what clearing is if when students receive their results in the summer, if they've not met the conditions of their firm or insurance choice and have kind of no offers at that point, they go through a process called clearing, where they need to call up universities or have conversations via social media, whereby they are selling themselves to universities and courses that still have places available. And that is much easier if you are at home in and around Stourbridge than if you are on holiday, for example, over the other side of the world, because clearing places get really filled up on a first come first serve basis, and therefore it's important that you're on the ball in this regard if it's a process that is needed. Many students don't use clearing because they get the grades that they need to go to either their firm or insurance choice, but where they don't, or they again have changed the direction that they want to go in, for example, they need to be on hand to make contact with universities in and around A-level results day. And as I say, I make no apologies for repeating it, that's much easier. You know, A-level results day is about collecting results and celebration and so on, but it's also about managing your next steps as well. We're going to take a breather now. Faye or Lou, I'm not sure if you want to come on camera for a second. I'm just going to mute myself just for a moment to grab a drink. And if there's anything from a college point of view that you wanted to mention while I do, and anyone in the room as well, if you want to grab a drink as well, I'll just have 2 minutes before I move on to open days.
That's lovely. Jeff, that's so very helpful, and I'm sure that parents and students have benefited a huge amount from the information you've given. I think it's actually really helpful to see this as a timeline and as some priorities for now, but also as a timeline spanning across you know, the whole application process. And of course, from a college perspective, you know, we follow this timeline with information for students, for parents, and there's a number of things that actually I'm going to refer to my list as you were talking that I kind of wanted to mention just in these literally couple of minutes, and we won't take long so that we can move on to the second session. But from a student perspective, and for parents to know, the week commencing the 19th of June is the Careers Week in college, where students will actually be meeting with their PTs in a group, and we'll actually be then going through the start of the UCAS process. So application forms with a buzzword. So if you can hold off, and Jeff mentioned that they are open, but we would be very glad if students can hold off doing that, just because they have to attach themselves with a buzzword that we have that's completely unique to the college, and we will go through that. That's actually going to be a really good session for students to be a part of, and it will start the ball rolling with the application process. And personal tutors will be going through the initial kind of guidance on that. From a parent perspective, I'd just like to mention that Jeff spoke about the UCAS Hub, which is an absolutely brilliant place to start with as a tool to begin investigations, along with all of the other things he mentioned. There's also the Unifrog platform that the college gives students and parents access to. Parents' passwords may have expired, and you can email careers@keds.ac.uk if you'd like us to refresh that password, but you can utilise that alongside your student as well with their login details. Looking forward and talking about this timeline, we are going to have an HE fair on the 4th of October during the day for students, and Jeff will be representing Aberystwyth very firmly there, along with his colleagues on outreach from probably something like 60 or so universities. I think Jeff will agree it was actually a really good occasion when we did that for the first time in October of last year, and we hope that that will be extremely useful for students. Now, that is a student-only opportunity, and that really is to supplement the open days that you might book onto as students and parents during the sort of from now until that point. But I think Jeff would agree with us that actually that opportunity for students to come and look around was very, very useful, and we hope you will all maximise that. There are one-to-ones on offer from Faye and myself. I would say that we are extremely busy before the end of term with some additional support that we're adding into outreach, but one-to-ones will be available to students if you would like that. And if it's not an emergency, then certainly at the beginning of next term would be helpful. The heap online we'll be looking at, and I can't remember, and that's partly my fault, whether in fact we have got the heap online. I know we have one in the library, but whether we have an online version, so I'm going to check that, and Faye and I will distribute some information about that. You are right about making aspirational choices, particularly I think one really aspirational choice out of your options, your 5 options, is probably about right. There may be some reasons why some students might look at maybe 2, but we would suggest, along with Jeff, keeping that to 1, and also making sure that those extra choices, the 5 choices, but certainly the 2 that you end up with, that both of those are really good choices. Don't choose your sort of second choice something that you don't want to go to. We really want that to be a discerning and positive choice, because it is something. I certainly ended up with mine, and actually it was a great choice, but make sure that's well thought through. The UCAS application internal deadline will be sometime in November, mid November, and the reason for that, as Jeff said, is that January, whilst it is a key outside date, we have to process all of those, add on references, and so we need that admin time, so that will be issued as a date fairly soon in the autumn term. Personal statements. Jeff, you were absolutely brilliant, spot on with the kind of concepts that you put forward. Just remember to find those really, really key reasons. It's what Faye and I speak about in the one-to-ones, really key reasons for wanting to study these. Find some aspirational, inspirational reasons. Look at TED Talks, look at podcasts, go to the open days, go to some lectures, find some stuff online that's really interests you, and have a really good personal reason in that personal statement opening paragraph as to why this is a really important study for you. I'm going to hand back over to Jeff. That was a great opportunity to do what I might have done at the end.
Yeah, and just to back up there before we move on,
Yeah.
the parents don't need to worry. Students can't submit their final UCAS application yet. They can't even do that to the autumn. So that's why Lou mentioned, when you say it was week commencing the 19th, the HE week.
Yes, that's when we start, get them to log on.
That's absolutely perfect. Tonight's about food for thought, thinking through the process, but students then, if they're working with personal tutors in just over a week's time, is absolutely perfect. So don't worry, nothing can be submitted yet. That's all done in the autumn. And then secondly, if the college don't have the heap online, the heap physical copy is absolutely perfect in its own right. And that's got, yeah.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay.
That's brilliant.
Okay,
Super.
perfect.
I'm going to leave you to get on with the second part, and I do hope everybody will stay online, because actually making the most of these open days is very critical to making those decisions, and I know Jeff will give you some really good advice on that. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you very much. So making the most of open days, as I mentioned, open days are ultra critical in the decision making process. I mentioned it at the start that you would never go and buy a house without going to look at it, and I think it's the same with the investment that as a student and as a family you're making into your higher education experience. And we might have a run for by just a couple of minutes, but we won't be too long after 7. What I'm going to cover are 6 of the key areas that how you can go about making the most of those experiences on open days. So let's begin with what you can be doing before you actually get there. Before you get to the open day, the more planning and prep that you do, the more that you'll get out of the day. You go with questions, you'll leave with answers. You don't go with questions and you'll leave with questions. And yes, they can be answered at a later date, but you really want to get them answered on the day where possible. And the first thing that I would do is sign up. Sign up to the open days that you're interested in, and also look at the program. So the reason to sign up is so that you know where you need to be and when you need to be there. And if you sign up to an open day and decide not to go, it's no problem. The university might contact you after, but it's no problem if you change your mind. But by signing up, you'll get the program, you'll know where you need to be and when you need to be there. And when you look at the program, what you can start to do is plan your day. You plan your day so you can see all of the academic and non-academic departments that you want to engage with, which I'll come on to in the next section. Plan your journey as well. So for example, if you're coming over to Aber, you could come on the train or you could come in the car. And also, really interestingly, I'd plan your journey for local universities as well. If you're looking at local universities, and we are awash with amazing universities in the Midlands, plan the journey that you would do as a student, that you would do when you go there. If you go to that university as a student, what's the commute going to be like? So you plan your journey and you do that commute like you're a real student. You'll start to see whether you can, I say the word cope, whether you'd be happy with that journey day in, day out if you're a student there. So that even applies to local universities that you go to. As a student, I'd recommend, where possible, taking a friend or family member so that they can give their input as well. They might spot things that you don't, and also take a pen and paper to write stuff down. And as I've mentioned, really, really critically, think of some questions. And when you're thinking of those questions as well, consider the personal statement. By going on the open day and going up to the academic staff at the end of the presentation on the course that you're interested in and say to them, what are the top things that you're looking for in an applicant? They say ABC. Well, you've got an idea then what you might need to be focusing on the personal statement. Obviously, they're talking to it from their university point of view, but by considering the personal statement, considering the questions that you might want to ask, you're going to come away with lots of informed information, not only to make the right decisions for you, but also to improve the quality of that personal statement as well. Some must-dos at the event. A lot of people, the purpose of the open day is to see whether you can see yourself studying and potentially living in the location that you are interested in, whether you can see that you're going to enjoy the course that you're going into, that you're going to get your teeth into for at least 3 or more years. And that's one of the key things on an open day. You'll be engaging with academic areas. Please don't worry, everybody. And I'm going to put my neck on the line and say, without exception, at university open days across the country are super friendly. Not only are there no daft questions, but the academic staff who are passionate about their subject, they'll want to see that passion from you. And by getting a conversation going with them, you're going to get so much out of it that you won't get on websites, for example. When you engage with those academic staff, you will be have a tour of the facilities. You might have a course overview to find out the content. You'll see how you're taught and assessed. You know, are you in big lecture theatres? Are you in labs? Are you in small classrooms? What links that they've got with industry and what employment that graduates in that area have gone on to. What's the accreditation as well? So that's applicable to some areas and not all. So for example, as I mentioned earlier, the BPS for psychology, the British Psychological Society, really critical in my opinion. So you can find out whether the course is accredited. And actually, whilst I've put the perfect applicant, there's no such thing as a perfect applicant, but what you can start to see is what makes a good applicant. And I know it can be a little bit daunting and scary to go up to staff and ask them questions. At our open day, someone went up to Nigel for psychology and said, what is the main thing you are looking for in an applicant to psychology? And he told them one of the things that he's looking for is an understanding of what becoming a psychologist is all about. So again, they'll go away and think about how they can kind of prove that. Just one aspect of a good application. As well as academic areas, you'll also engage with non-academic areas, and this will vary depending on what's important to you. So for example, if you're looking at local universities, you might not be overly interested in the accommodation, but remember though, you might decide to live at home and commute in year one, and then you might decide to move into accommodation or private university owned or private accommodation in year 2 and 3. So it might be worth going to see the accommodation, but also you can engage with student support to see how you're guided and supported every step of the way. Careers, finance and funding, scholarships and bursaries, any admissions queries you've got, the list is pretty endless. And also you can go and see the Students' Union, how ran by students for students, how they support current students during their time at university, about democracy, representation, getting involved, volunteering. So non-academic areas in so many ways are just as important as academic areas. Saying that though, perhaps the most important body of individuals to chat with are student ambassadors. So they are current students at the university. Remember what I said earlier though about they're giving their own individual personal experience, but that's why on an open day I'd recommend talking to multiple student ambassadors, asking them questions about their own journey, what experiences they've had at the university, what support they've kind of used while they're there. Campus tours, they might take you around the campus, so chat to them, engage with them throughout as a family or as an individual. Find out what their aspirations are, and really importantly, what advice would they have for their former self when they were in year 12 or 13. I think that's a really key one to have a conversation with ambassadors about, what they wish they would have known just a few years ago. So you've got 3 key groups of stakeholders there that I would thoroughly advise engaging with. Some people think an open day is just about academia and academic staff. That is a key part, but so are the other 2 as well. And when you are engaging with these groups of people, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to give you some of those key insider questions that I'd recommend that you think about asking them. So as I say, what are the top things you are looking for in an applicant? Does it need any compulsory work experience? What life skills are they looking for? What excellence within the academic subject would make you stand out from the crowd? Basically, how can you give yourself the edge? And that's why open days that are taking place before the summer are key, because if you get on an open day which is perfectly reasonable to do in the autumn, in October and November, and we hold them in the autumn, the slight disadvantage to that is if you have got a gap in your skill set, you haven't got as much time to fill it. You get on an open day before the summer and you've got time over the summer to get the experiences, skills and so on. And to give you an example, for law, which is a really popular subject with us, great skills include advocacy, working with the public. And one of the things, it was a colleague, I think at another university, told me that some of their law tutors are looking for work experience at a food bank. You're dealing with the public, solving problems and so on. My point to you there is if you know about that sooner, you can make it happen over the summer potentially. You wait till the autumn and you'll have all the other things that year 13 throws at you to juggle and contend with as well. So spreading the load early, and that's the point of why we're doing tonight. What will you actually be studying? Going back to the example I used in the first part, business and management, does some of the courses focus on marketing? Do others focus on economics? Others international business, for example? What will you actually be studying on the course? The analogy I always give, you can't get the whole of history since the beginning of time into one degree. And yet some people think, I want to do a history degree. Well, does it focus on the areas that you're good at and you enjoy? And linked to that as well, how are you going to be assessed? Some people have the misconception that all university courses are assessed via examination. That is not true. Some are exam, coursework, poster campaigns, oral assessments. There's loads of different ways that students can be assessed. I don't think anyone likes to be assessed, but does the course align with the where you excel in from an assessment point of view? What value added is there with the course? How are you going to leave the university with more than just a degree? So what expertise are there within the department staff wise that you're looking at? What links are there with industry? And also as well, potentially, are there opportunities from a global field? What I mean by that is, are there opportunities to undertake placements or experiences outside of the UK? Basically goes back to, how are you going to leave that course in 3 or 4 years time with more than a degree? What value added to make you again stand out in the marketplace are you going to get from studying that course at that institution? And that links to as well, what broad plethora of jobs and professions are open to me post graduation. Some people think that if you do a degree in subject X, it only offers careers within that subject. That's not true, because a lot of employers are open to multiple degree subjects. So get a flavour of what people who've done the course previously have gone on to. What scholarships and bursaries are available? So scholarships and bursaries are free money to incentivize you to study a particular course at a particular institution. So obviously cost of living is, key for everybody at the moment. And if scholarships and bursaries are there at a particular university or subject that you're interested in, you want to know more about the application process and what is involved with those. From a non-academic point of view, what different accommodation options are there? Think about what your negotiables are as well. So do you want en suite, or are you happy to share a bathroom, for example? And then really, really importantly, what is student life like at the university? Again, if you're moving away from home, you're going to be living in a particular town or city. Perhaps you've only been to a few times before, or you might have friends and family there. But because you're living it, again, 24/7, that's why to engage with ambassadors there on the day to talk about how they feel student life is like is a key part of the open day. So moving on from that and student life, exploring the location. So Aberystwyth, for those of you who don't know, for example, we're quite a small town surrounded by natural beauty, kind of a historical and modern kind of really good mix and balance. And I'll make a point that we're quite a small town, because when you look at the location of a university, what Aberystwyth can offer, for example, could be very different to a large city, a Manchester, a Leeds, a Liverpool. And I am certainly not here to say one place is right for everybody. That's the point of the open day, though, is to see from the location point of view, firstly, from the daytime perspective, whether the university and the location is right for you. And I sound like an absolute broken record. Go in to see it. You will then come away, hopefully, with more of an understanding and an idea as to whether that place is for you or potentially not. So like Aberystwyth, for example, aquatic sports, because we're just right by the beach. One of my colleagues takes a paddleboard over to Aberystwyth every time she goes, for example. And then you can go, one of the student union societies, they used to be at Aberystwyth, was called Aberhowl, Howl, where they used to go into the forest or the woods just behind Aberystwyth and started screaming. It was a form of scream therapy to de-stress. So again, it goes back to the location and what it can offer to you, as well as obviously the alpacas as well. I mean, I'm not sure if there's any alpacas in Stourbridge, but it goes back to my original point. What is it that you're looking for in a location, and does it offer the things that make you tick as a student? This is Aberystwyth again in terms of the town. The train is at about the center of this clock image on the screen now. But again, the experience that you'll get in a rural environment, very different to a city environment, and you need to decide which is right for you. And that's what the purpose, or one of the main purposes, of the open days are. Really importantly as well, some universities are what are known as multi-campus universities. So you'll see the term campus bandied around a lot. This is why registering for an open day is really important, because if you're going to a multi-campus open day, you want to make sure you go to the right campus. So for example, the University of Wolverhampton, it's based in, amongst others, Walsall and Wolverhampton. Again, the location that you might go to on the open day will vary depending on the course you're interested in, and that's another top tip to make sure you can explore the right campus and the right location for you, as well as making the key decision as to whether you can see yourself living there, if you're going to move away from home, or, as I've mentioned, even if you are commuting to the university, you need to feel happy, content in that place, even if it is just a couple of buses away, that you can see yourself studying and embracing that university for 3 or more years. So we've just talked about the daytime of the location as well. I know, again, of repeating myself, which I completely recognise, that universities open days take time, effort, and money. But the reason I'm going to say what I say now, which is, if possible, and you're looking to go to a university further afield, spend the night there, the night before, the night after, so you can really see the town, the city, the location from a nightlife point of view, if it is what you are looking for, because we all have different things that make us tick. You know, Aberystwyth students having barbecues on the beach, for example, but also universities, what does that place offer you from a kind of a 24/7 point of view? And by seeing the open day not only in its own right on the day, but also the day before or the day after, and spending time in that town or city, you'll be able to make the right decision for you, because every part of the UK has something different. And this is a slide that I use with students as to things that people find fun to do. And the one that sometimes can get a bit of a chuckle is fishing. But that's my whole point. Because different parts of the UK have different unique selling points, and we all need and want different things to go, see, explore, you can decide as a family and as an individual, does it meet what your expectations are? And that's what it's all about. We've all got different expectations, and the open day is a key way of exploring the location from a recreation point of view to see whether it's right for you. Penultimate area that we're going to mention, virtual experiences. The vast majority of open days are back to face-to-face, but you might find some taster experiences or interviews or opportunities to engage with academic staff, for example, in a virtual way. So I'm just going to quickly go through this because they do still exist. The reason why I'm not spending too long on this is because, in my opinion, it goes back to what I said earlier. The best way is to go, see, and explore. Virtual open days do have their place, but you still will only get so much from seeing someone through a screen. To go to the place itself, that will really help you make the right decision, in my opinion. But again, if you've got a virtual open day or virtual taster session, know the program, know where you need to be logging on. The university should be providing that for you. Any tools that you might need as well. So again, if you've got a virtual session, they might ask you for chat, or they might have some surveys that they need you to do. So again, they should let you know in advance if you need to do any preparation in that regard. Be in a comfortable space. I mean, we've all, been through COVID, so we've got used to, like we are now, having a virtual session, but be in a comfortable place where you can engage and talk with hopefully as little distraction as possible, and engage and get the information that you need. Have some snacks on hand as well, really importantly. And also, with a virtual open day, there are some, list the virtual stands that you want to engage with. I found when I was working on open days at a number of universities before Aberystwyth in a virtual sense, that it is quite easy to miss different stands that you might want to engage with virtually. So have that list just like you would on a physical open day, and ask questions. Ask questions on chat. There's no daft questions, and find out if you can engage via any additional ways. So are there upcoming taster sessions or ways to see the university longer term as well? And you can see we've got still our virtual tour online, and a lot of universities will continue to have that. Finally, from me, after you leave the open day, there's still some planning and preparation to do after you leave the open day. Don't see it in isolation. Reflect and discuss exactly what you have seen with the people you've been with, and think about where the gaps are in that skill set, what grades you need to be working towards as well. Continue the question through web and through the web. So some universities, for example, have a system called UniBuddy, where you can engage with individual students and ask questions about the course or student life, for example. And are there any other taster sessions? And really, really importantly, compare, contrast, continue the further research, and as I've said already, visit as many open days. I mean, there's obviously a limit, but visit a number of open days to make the right decision for you, because that's what it's all about. That's what Faye and Lou want. We want students to make the absolute right decision for them, and that's why we've spent the last 20 minutes or so on open days, because they are a key cog in that process. Faye, Lou, I'll hand back over to you.
Excellent. Oh, Jeff, thank you so much indeed. I'm sure that parents and students have gained a great deal of information and hopefully some confidence about the process that is in front of them. There will be parents who perhaps haven't had any of their children go to university before, and this, I think, has been very, very helpful. What we will do, as we're a little short on time now, we'll ask parents if they have any questions for the next 5 minutes or so, and then we'll wrap up. But parents are certainly able to, and students can email us at careers@keds.ac.uk, and we'll be passing any of those questions on to Jeff. If you'd like to put in the chat any questions that you have, we will just take those for 5 minutes. As I say, I have got some questions that we've been asked in advance. So whilst we're waiting for that, I will ask a couple of those. You've talked about the deadline for the university, so hopefully that one will have been answered. One of the questions which I thought was interesting was, how does uni life differ from first year and into the second and third years? I mean, some students may even be doing a fourth year, but how does that sort of introductory phase in the first year differ perhaps from the second year?
Yeah, so I think the first year, part of the transition, I think the most challenging transition to university is all about the university and the student life. So it's about the first term, especially settling in. I think there's the hardest academic transition is from GCSE to A level. I think the transition to university is about managing your own workload, managing your own independence, and this is the same whether you live at home or move away from home as well. And I think, and that's why university, for example, has Freshers Week. So Freshers Week is at the start of first year, and that's where students can, from an academic, non-academic point of view, students' union, clubs, societies, they can engage with the university and kind of find out about all the different elements and support mechanisms that are in place and how they can get involved with the students' union. So the transition, I would say, is start of the first year, for example, finding their feet, and then the second year really potentially continuing to embrace university life. What happens when students move away from home is that many students in first year will stay in what is known as halls of residence, and they will live either on campus or in and around campus. Some students will stay in halls of residence in second and third year, but many will go and live in the private sector and have private landlords, for example. So there's another little change as well.
That's really helpful, thank you. And I think probably you and I would encourage, as I know Faye would recommend too, that students really look seriously in this current climate at these extra years that might be built in, these options that are built in for students to perhaps have a placement year or a year globally. We were looking, Faye and I, today at the map of the world and looking at where Stourbridge is and thinking, it's a very small place and it's a very big world, and actually the experiences that students can have during that time, I think is very useful. And also in this current climate of working, we know that jobs are competitive, and therefore the experiences of applying your subject in a job role and in an environment, in an institution or a company, I think is a very useful one to consider.
And added to that as well as placement years where you spend the year in industry, and well as year abroad years where you do just that. What many students and parents don't know are integrated masters, and that's where students tag on an extra year and they come out with a master's level qualification as well. So for example, in engineering, you might find an MEng, a master's in engineering, which is another kind of qualification option out there as well.
That's great. We've got a question about what is the difference between a single honour course and a joint honour course. Is one better than the other or seen as more desirable by employers? And I can understand why a student might ask that. And what's the difference between a BSc and BSc and a BA? We may not have too much time to answer this, but if you can be quick, Jeff,
yeah,
that
sure.
would be smashing.
So a single honours is where you go to university and study one subject, let's say history, and a joint honours is where you go to university and study two, occasionally more subjects. So let's say history and English. Is one more desirable than employers than another? That's a really subjective question, because some people might, and this goes the same for students as well, they might prefer single honours where they're spending 100% of their time on one subject and they can really go deeper into that subject. Others may say, well, actually, I like the thought of having two subjects in one degree, and actually that might broaden my opportunities later on down the line as well. But remember, it doesn't last double the duration of time. It lasts the same duration. So you're naturally not going to be studying those two subjects in more detail. So it's a really subjective question, a great question as well.
And also, as well, Jeff, if I may add, sorry, as well, there are some professions, for instance, law or teaching, where it's important to check the weight of the courses, isn't it? You might have been going on to say that, but I think it's just really important with a joint honours course to check the weighting, whether it's 50-50, 40-60, so that you can make sure that whatever you're going on to do is accommodated by the weight of that course.
And that's, again, for the open day, that's a perfect question for the academic staff. If you've got an idea what you want to go into longer term and you're looking at joint honours in those areas, they can say, well, actually, yes, no, maybe, depending on what it is you're looking at. A difference between a BSc and a BA, so they're the acronyms that come at the start of the degree title. So a BSc is a Bachelor of Science, and it just gives you a little bit of a flavour if it's a more sciencey focused degree, or a BA is a Bachelor of Arts and more arts focused to it. But that's the, I'm not sure the right word, it's the former part. So my degree is BA Honours, Business and Human Resource Management. You might find a BSc in Computer Science, for example, but it's the acronym and the flavour of which kind of route it goes down, the science or the arts based.
That's fantastic, thank you. And yes, we will be giving we will get these links over to everybody as well, so that's not a problem at all. We'll get that for students, and I think Faye's put that in there as well, so that's super. I'm going to wrap up the session as it's 7:15, and I know everybody is probably reeling from all of the information. I have to say, Jeff, I think that from a careers advisor point of view, I know that Faye and myself have a huge amount of respect for all of that information that you put in there, and I think that the comprehensive nature of that has given a lot of food for thought. It will be backed up, of course, within, as I say, the college calendar, and Faye and myself will be sending this recording round. We will send those links, but this is just the beginning really of the sessions that will support students. I don't know if Faye's got anything to add to that at all. Not at this stage, no. But what I would like to say is that we have an extremely strong partnership with Jeff personally within as our outreach person locally, but also with Aberystwyth University. I would encourage people to look at the courses that are at all universities, but Aberystwyth has an awful lot to offer, and we do hope that with our partnerships with Jeff and the university, that everybody will at least take a look whether it's right for them or not. Thank you this evening, Jeff. Thank you to parents and students for attending and being so patient online with the length of this, but hopefully you found some nuggets of information there, and you'll be able to process those afterwards. We'll be saying goodnight to you, and we look forward to seeing you on our next speaker series. We've got two coming up. one for those students who are interested in accountancy and one on STEM subjects over the next couple of weeks, and those are advertised on the website for parents. You will be able to see those online with your child as well through the MS Teams, similar to this evening.